You can master any skill and overcome any obstacle and triumph over any challenge in business, in life, in relationships, in your body, and in your finances, but only if you put yourself into a state where you refuse to settle for less than who you can be, what you can do, what you can give, and what you can create. Because everybody wants change, but very few people want the process that creates change. Everybody wants success, but most people are secretly committed to comfort, and comfort is the enemy. The problem isn't that people can succeed. The problem is they play the middle game. They go all in, they go all out. They try to stay safe. They want rewards without risk and results without rejection. And the reason is fear, not fear of losing money or time, but fear of what failure means. Because failure equals rejection and judgment, and I am not enough at the deep end. Fear human beings carry is that they not enough, and therefore one to be loved, so they hesitate and pull back right before the breakthrough, and call it being realistic, humble or careful when it really fear. And fear does disappear when you avoid it. It grows, yet everyone who wins acts anyway because they attach themselves to something bigger than fear, something bigger than money, status, or validation, because those collapse under pressure. What sustains you is purpose, a mission that makes quitting feel more painful than continuing, because disappointment is guaranteed. And the real question is whether disappointment destroys you or drives you, because disappointment can either turn into drive or into hesitation and retreat. And if it becomes drive, you win. If it becomes withdrawal, you lose, which is why this is not a game for one-apes. And when you look at fear and faith, you realize they are the same force used differently, both created by imagination. Fear is imagination undirected, and faith is imagination directed. And if you guide your imagination, it runs wild, because the human brain is wired for survival, not success. And survival instincts build extraordinary lives. Faith does, because faith is choosing what you focus on and rehearsing victory until certainty is built, and certainty changes behavior, action, and learning speed, and eventually identity shifts. Because skills transform lives, identity does. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your identity. And once identity changes, you see work as mastery and challenges as patterns in business, in people, and in yourself. And to stay in the game, you must grow, because there is no standing still. If you're not growing, someone else is, and they will replace you. Yet growth itself is what makes humans happy, because progress equals growth, and growth equals life. And nothing in life stays the same. Everything is growing or dying. Businesses, relationships, and people. And business magnifies this truth because it gives immediate feedback through profit and loss and customer response, which is why people avoid measurable arenas and hide in things that can be tested. But when you step into business, it's nowhere to hide. Intentions mere value does, and that feedback is painful but powerful if you listen. And then there is money, which creates inner conflict for good-hearted people who want to serve but resent profit, so they sabotage themselves by undercharging and erasing margins until reality hits, and they put everyone at risk, because money is evil. It magnifies who you already are, and unresolved identity conflict creates invisible ceilings. And fear never leaves, and only changes form. Courage is active anyway, and at some point you must choose whether you become the gladiator or partner with one, because every company needs artists and gladiators, and failure comes from pretending to be both, and forward motion does always take you where you want to go, but it always reveals the next lesson, because sometimes the problem is the progress, then identity collapses, not because something went wrong, but because something went right, because you cannot become who you need to be without letting go of who you've been. And identity collapse feels like confusion and doubt and instability, and most people retreat back to comfort, but stability is where dreams die. Because your current identity was built to survive your past, not create your future. And certainty must be engineered through repetition, because fear and faith are both conditioned states, and high performers wait to feel certain. They create certainty through action by managing their psychology daily, because if you don't manage your psychology, your environment will, and mixed emotions destroy momentum. Hesitation is felt by the market, because the market responds to certainty. And eventually you draw a line in the sand and decide who you are and what you will no longer tolerate from yourself, because decision collapses time, and lack of decision creates excuses. And once you decide, your brain finds ways, and failure becomes feedback, and pressure becomes training, and mastery is pattern recognition under pressure. And the gladiator emerges not because fear is gone, but because quitting is no longer an option. And what once terrified you now sharpens you, because hard games create powerful people. Nothing is being done to you. It is being done for you if you choose to see it that way. Because the world does reward potential. It rewards execution, and you become unstoppable by motivation, but by conditioning. By choosing growth over comfort, mission over mood, progress over perfection. Because once identity shifts, nothing can stop you. At a certain level, growth stops being exciting and starts becoming heavy, because expansion introduces pressure, and pressure reveals leadership. And this is where many people misunderstand what scaling really costs. Because when you grow, you don't just get more opportunity, you get more problems, more complexity, more responsibility, and more people depending on you. And leadership is not about being liked or admired, but about making decisions when there is no clear answer and standing in uncertainty without collapsing. Because as you scale, you can no longer rely on effort. You must rely on structure, systems, and standards. And this is where ego gets exposed, because leaders who need control slow everything down. Leaders who need approval weaken the culture. And leaders who avoid confrontation poison the future. And real leadership requires the willingness to disappoint people today, to protect the mission tomorrow. And partnerships become critical at this level, because who you partner with determines how fast you grow or how fast you fall. And misaligned partners cost more than bad markets, because values, pace, and tolerance for pain must match. And when they don't, hit friction turns into destruction. And scaling also forces you to confront delegation, because if you can let go, you become the bottleneck, and bottlenecks kill momentum. And momentum is oxygen, and without it, teams suffocate. And at this level, communication becomes currency, because what you tolerate becomes culture, and what you reward becomes behavior. And leaders who fail to set standards create chaos, and chaos drains energy, and energy determines execution, and execution determines results. And this is where emotional maturity becomes non-negotiable, because your mood becomes contagious, your certainty becomes infectious, and your fear becomes permission for others to hesitate. So you must regulate yourself before you attempt to lead others, because leadership is not about power. It is about responsibility, and responsibility is heavy. And if you are unwilling to carry weight, you should not scale, because growth amplifies everything, including weaknesses, and expansion exposes cracks that comfort hid. And at this level, you realize that talent is not enough, and passion is not enough, and vision is not enough, because without discipline they decay, and discipline is choosing standards over feelings, and consistency over intensity, and a long-term mission over short-term relief. And as pressure increases, you either upgrade your identity or the weight will crush you, because leadership demands sacrifice. Sacrifice of ego, sacrifice of comfort, sacrifice of being understood. And the higher you go, the fewer people can relate to you, which is why loneliness often accompanies leadership. But that loneliness is not a curse. It is proof that you are operating at a different altitude. And the question becomes whether you will shrink to reconnect with comfort or rise to build something worthy of the weight, because this stage is not about proving yourself. It is about becoming someone others can trust under pressure, someone whose presence creates stability in chaos, direction and uncertainty, and belief in moments when outcomes are unclear. And this is where real scale begins, not in revenue or size, but in capacity, because your business will never outgrow your nervous system. Your team will never exceed your standards, and your mission will never rise above your identity. And when you understand that leadership is not something you do, but something you embody, everything changes, because now growth is no longer about more. It's about better, deeper, stronger, and sustainable. And this is where the work becomes sacred, because you are no longer building just a company, you are building yourself into someone capable of carrying the mission forward, no matter the pressure.